everyone, it's Mithrilda and welcome back to my journey of learning to draw. So I am so close to finishing block 1 and I'm getting really restless and excited about it. This video will contain my progress for exercises 16 and 17, and that means there's only 3 paintings left until I start to get into drawing from life and proportional drawing and not using the transfers anymore, which is really exciting. Thinking about the paintings that are ahead of me and seeing how complicated and difficult the references look, I feel a little bit of, I don't know, like a resistance bubbling up inside me, just like the urge to procrastinate because I'm like, oh man, it looks really hard, I don't want to do it. But on the other hand, I feel like I've always needed a little bit of stress and time pressure in my life to actually get anything done. Like, when I'm really, really busy, I always dream of, oh, I wish I had all the time in the world, I wish I had all day, and I wish I didn't have to do anything else. But in reality, like I said, I would just waste my summer breaks and winter breaks because there was just nothing there to push me to work. And I feel like my exams are doing that for me. All while I was studying for my exams, I was like, I wish I had the time to paint and make videos and do art. But it's still exerting a force on me even now because it's always in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh, I only have 8 weeks left, only 7 weeks left, only 6 weeks left until I have to start studying again. And honestly, like that little bit of stress, I'm not too stressed out about it. Like I feel so much freer since I took my exam. But having that thought in the back of my mind and knowing that every day, minute, hour is precious to me really has encouraged me to use my time better. And I don't know, I didn't really plan it this way, I didn't really think about it, but it really is on my mind all the time. So hopefully I'll be able to harvest a bit of this stress and get through the rest of block 1 and maybe even get through block 2 before I have to start studying for exams again. Apparently there's only 10 paintings that go pretty quick in block 2, and you know, I feel pretty ready for it. I'm just itching to get into it now. Today we're going to be talking some more with Kevin and picking his brain for more little nuggets of knowledge. Okay, so I had a question. Somebody commented on my video and they were like, I wish there was something like Evolve where you could just not think about it other than following the instructions for perspective. And I was thinking, yeah, that's, you know, like one of the main reasons why I was interested in Evolve is because of like the claim that it's like the complete diet, right? You don't have to worry about anything and it's all served to you. Do you know of any other programs like that for other subjects post-Evolve?
Not really. You know, one of the problems that we run into is, you know, when you learn enough, when you know enough to be able to effectively teach something, when you understand the ins and outs of it, you forget what it's like to not know, to not be able to see things. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been in classes where not as a student, but like as a pro, kind of hanging out, kind of I'm friends with the teacher and you know, I'm just hanging out because we're going to grab dinner later on, right? And he's teaching and he'll say, I'll hear him across the room and I'll be like, hey, can't you see that? And I'm thinking like, probably not, you know? You don't know. The person doesn't see the temperature shifts. They don't understand the bone structure. So they don't understand that what they're looking at there is bone and that's not bone. And that, you know, this is soft tissue and this is cartilage and that's bone. They don't know. You know because you've been doing it for 30 years. You've forgotten what it's like to not understand, to not be able to see it. Right, so let me like give you an example of that. Right. So at this point, are you seeing things differently?
Yes.
Like when you look, you break them down differently, right? And that's going to really kind of ramp up when we get into color. Like right now, you're just dealing in grayscale and edges. When we get into color, the change in how you view not just your art but the world, when you walk around and you're seeing these temperature shifts and you're seeing these color combinations, and you'll look at something and be like, I know those colors, I know how to mix that. It'll be like your brain will be mixing the colors for you while you're walking around just viewing the world. And once you start that ball rolling, your brain just does it on its own. It's kind of funny. Um, but imagine like, so you're how you view things is different right now from just a couple of, what, a month, 2 months ago, right?
Yeah, like 2 months ago.
Imagine what somebody who's been doing this professionally for 30 years sees. I mean, you can't even fathom what they perceive in a glance. The world almost looks like a schematic, color combinations, almost RGB numbers, and like Pantone. You can see the perspective, and it's almost mathematical in the way you see it because you understand how it works. It's such an intimate level because you've been immersed in it for decades. How could you possibly, if they took all of that away, like we can't even, like a person like me, it's hard to even fathom that somebody can't see those things, especially when they're pointed out. What do you mean you can't see that? I had Daniel Fulton's one of the guys in the helps run the program. He was at the school and he does incredible art now. He was in the school for almost 3 years before he could see the difference in temperature between warm and cool things. I mean, I almost murdered him a few times because I couldn't believe he couldn't see it. I'm showing him every possible thing I could possibly think of to demonstrate it, and he couldn't see it. But you can't see what you can't see. One day he comes in and he's got a smile on his face and he's like, I see temperature. He's like, what's that movie, The Sixth Sense? I see dead people. He's like, I see temperature. It was like weeks of him. Look at the temperature, it's everywhere. It's really funny. And now if you look at his work, it's like, it is so deeply embedded in his work, that play of temperature. He goes out of his way to work with it because he really likes it. And he's so like keyed in on it. But the thing is, like, so finding somebody who really understands how these things work, but hasn't lost touch with what it is to not understand them, is going to struggle to teach. That's why it's so hard to get a good teacher in art, because, you come up and by the time you have fought your way to a place where you understand these things and you can see them, you don't remember what it's like to not be able to see them. It's like not understanding why somebody is truly like blind. They can't see stuff. You're trying to tell them, like, but can't you see the green over there? And they're like, no, I can't see it. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't see. And learning to see you have to be taught. And it's an active skill that you develop. It doesn't happen by itself. And so, things like perspective, there's mathematical perspective. And there are a couple of books on that. You think about it, 1-point perspective. How many pages do you need for that? That's 1 page to explain it. 2-point perspective, it's another page to explain it. 3-point perspective, maybe 2 pages to explain it. It's not a book. It's not a program. It's really not an anything. It's a kind of like an idea with very, very simple formulas. And after that, a lifetime of experience playing with it to get good, right? So it's not like, and this is why I said, like, I don't know any programs where they go into depth because there's not a lot of depth in it. Like for us, I don't teach perspective because if you know how to see, you'll see perspective and you don't need a mathematical formula, right? The mathematical formula came after the perception. They wanted to figure out why things looked the way they looked and how to quantify it. But they saw it first. They made sense of it first. Same with anatomy. Like, I think, like, learning anatomy, it's better to learn anatomy after you've painted figures. Because you're looking at, if you look at anatomy first, much like perspective, it becomes formulaic. It becomes like a medical education, or in terms of perspective, it's a mathematical education. Then you try to take that sterile bit of information and bring it to life in a painting. You're better off learning how it works in life, getting a sense of it there, and then filling in the gaps with the math or with the science. And that's my take on it. I know people who they do a lot of perspective in their work, and their perspective always, like, I can tell when they've drawn something out of their imagination and when it was from real reference. The stuff from real reference feels real. The stuff that's done mechanically always feels mechanical. They're the same artists, same skills, same, but when they do it themselves and they're using that mechanical process, it's just something. There's a lack of dirt under the fingernails, kind of a thing. Like the things we see, there's no razor stubble. The face is too clean cut. There's stuff like that. It's like walking into a house and there's not a speck of dust anywhere. It's like something's not. It would be uncomfortable. Like, or maybe not. I mean, but some people are probably like, "Where do you live?" But like your thing is like if you walk into a home and everything is perfect, it looks perfectly staged. There's not a speck of dust anywhere. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like anyone lives there. And I think that mathematical perspective, like learning anatomy first, pushes an artist in that direction. And they have a hard time bridging the gap and getting back. I know one artist who his anatomical knowledge is just incredible, and he's been able to bring it back over into really kind of bringing paintings to life with it. But I know other people, and it's like they accentuate things that are under the skin that, some muscles are paper thin. They don't have that. You don't see them on the surface. They're literally as thick as a sheet of paper. They don't impact the surface at all. But if you know it's there, you're looking for it and you're looking for it. You could make some kind of mark to explain it because you know it's there. But then it doesn't look right? And so...
Hi, I'm just gonna interrupt quickly here because I ran into disaster as I was trying to start this cat painting. I was already a little bit stressed about it. I mean, look at it. Oh my God. But I accidentally flipped over the canvas and I traced the image onto the wrong side and I tried to paint on it and it was acting really weird. It was like feathering at the edges. The paint wasn't sticking to the canvas and I was freaking out thinking that I had gotten like the oil to paint ratio wrong. I tried experimenting with different levels. It wasn't working. And then I cut off a corner of my canvas so I could test the other side. And that's when I realized I had the wrong side of the canvas. So I didn't even know that there was a wrong side of the canvas. So I guess learn from my mistakes. All right, let's continue.
So like I said, for me, like there's a great book. I recommend it to everybody. How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Great book on perspective. It's like 5 pages. Shows how to use it for comics. Works for comics, works for everything else. I think it's like a $29 book, US. And not only that, but you get some anatomy in there. You get some compositional education. Not top tier stuff, but it gives you a decent sense to start, and it's not overly complicated. And like for me, like that's why like I recommend for perspective and for proportional drawing of like figures, like to get a sense of how to sketch a figure, and a little bit of composition. That book is great. It's a really good book, and it's funny. I would assert that for what it is, it's one of the best. Even if you're not interested in comics, it gives you a real kind of bare knuckles approach to getting the job done. And then you just commit time and energy to it. And it's not overly wordy. The book is not much different than comics. It's a lot of pictures, but it's easy to pick up and make sense of. So like for me, that's where I would start. Get a feeling of it. And then you start looking for things. Like once you have a little bit of information, you'll recognize the things that are missing, and you'll be able to look at other programs or other books and see, where things that you're missing that you're looking for will become obvious when you see them in another place, and it makes it easier to figure out where not to start, but where to pick up on the other side of something like that. But yeah, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, of all things. Well, because you think about it, like Spider-Man, every single scene there's buildings. You're looking down a city street. You're looking at it up at a big building, right? So there's nothing but perspective in those comics. They're like And there's a lot of them that are like this. So the guys who are doing the perspective in those really have got to know their stuff. But they break it down. Like I said, it's only like maybe 5 pages. Yeah, again, not a very complex subject. You can make it complex, but it's not really that complicated.
All right, so talking to Kevin about this was super, super interesting. It's hard to accept now, but sort of just hearing the fact that, once I get there, once I get to the end of this and I know some stuff, then the gaps in my knowledge will become more apparent. Right now, it seems like there's just an endless buffet of resources, right? And I'm like, what happens when I get to the end of this course and I don't know what to study next and I don't know what to do next but just hearing him say that, like, you know what, like, calm yourself. Like, when you get there, you'll know. I feel like no one else has really said things like that before, or maybe I just wasn't listening. Sometimes you have to hear something 20, 30 different times before it finally sinks into your mind. Like the concept of someone who masters something not being able to adequately teach it because they don't remember what it's like to be a beginner anymore. That's the principle of why I started my channel, because I feel like it's different hearing someone who's been doing something for a long time talk about their journey versus someone who's going through it, right? Because over time, over decades, you forget about some of the small details. When you get to the end, some things feel like they've always been obvious, and you don't remember the way that you struggled in the beginning. I guess it's just like a different perspective that I'm trying to offer. But then I get to like a sort of paradox with my own channel, right? Because as I learn more, my level of relatability in a way will just naturally decrease. And I'm not really sure what to do about that, but I don't really have time to think about it at this point. I feel like this concept of not being able to adequately learn from people that you look up to or people who have mastered their craft applies to a lot of different things. Like, I was literally just scrolling through Reddit yesterday and I saw this post about Bo Burnham. Don't take advice from people like me who got very lucky. Taylor Swift telling you to follow your dreams is like a lottery winner saying, liquidize your assets, buy Powerball tickets. It works. Like, even we don't always know what worked. Earlier on in my journey, I used to love watching those videos that people made of like my top 10 tips for figure drawing, or like how I learned to do X or Y or whatever. And I felt like, what better way to learn how to do something than to listen to someone who's gone through it before and is now very successful at it. But now I realize that even they might not know what helped them, you know? Just because they were doing one thing at the time that they gained a lot of progress doesn't mean that all the stuff that they tried before that didn't work didn't help to provide that foundation that they were able to step off of. And also, I know a lot of people who recommend things that they didn't even do. You know, they're just like, oh, I went in this way and then I did this book and then I did this course and I didn't really like them. And I recommend you just go straight to this one over here. When they might not even know that it was only through the stuff that didn't work that they were able to understand the stuff that did later on. And I feel like the only real way to prove what works and what doesn't is to just give it to a bunch of people and see what works and what doesn't. So I feel like over time I've started listening to pros and masters and just people who are really good artists less. And I've been trying to listen to teachers more, people who have given their techniques to a bunch of different people and seen like which are the good ways to explain it, which are the bad ways to explain it, which books their students really learn from, and which books didn't work for their skill level. Because I feel like it's easy to theorize about what the best resources are and what the best ways of learning are, but the only real way to validate that is to give it to a bunch of students. And a lot of people on the internet that I used to listen to a lot have never taught anyone, have never taken a student and given them their knowledge. Because teaching in and of itself is also a skill. I was talking to someone the other day and I was telling them, yeah, I went to these Japanese classes and they were a lot of fun. My Japanese teacher had written a textbook and I really liked the way that it's laid out. And they said, Why would you pay money for a language teacher? All you need to do is like go on a free language exchange website, because there's a lot of people wanting to learn English and they can teach you Japanese and everything's great. But just because you know something like English or Japanese doesn't mean that you can teach it, right? Like, I know English, I grew up speaking English, but I wouldn't know the terms for specific parts of grammar or why certain things sound right and why certain other things don't. It becomes like that. It just becomes instinctual. You just do it after a certain time. After doing art for 30 years, you just do it. And then you're not able to explain how it happened or how it works unless you specifically dial it back and learn to teach and learn how to explain these things. That was a lot of thoughts. Anyway, exercise 16 took 5 hours and 41 minutes, and exercise 17 took 7 hours and 18 minutes, which I feel like is not bad after my wrong side of the canvas debacle where I had to retrace everything, and also having to watch about 35 minutes of video for this painting. Overall, I'm really proud of how this one turned out, and I feel like it's giving me just enough of a confidence boost to get started on the next painting, which looks really hard. Anyway, thank you guys all so much for watching and following me here on this journey. Stay safe and healthy, and remember that talent is a myth. Now, get back to work.